Early morning. Iman came to work as usual. He had successfully secured a position as a cashier at the bank despite not having any formal education. Despite the prestigious job, his clerk's salary of only 2,000 ringgits was insufficient for his living expenses. His thoughts are interrupted by a regular client of the bank, a little old lady who hands Iman a bag of 1-cent coins that she needs to exchange. The young man tries to tell the woman that they don't accept such small change, but the bank's administrator, Mr. Reza, steps in. Reza orders Iman to take the bag of coins and apologize to the old woman. This completely ruins the young man's mood, and he decides to take a break, having a coffee with his friend, Intan. The head of the computer security department, Intan, has been Iman's best friend since childhood. However, she can't join him at that moment because her boss, Irene, informs Intan of another system breach. Intan asks her friend for help. She remembers that he was good with computers since school. Iman finds a program in the system, Digital Karma, which turns out to be very smart and hard to remove from the bank's server. After a few minutes, Iman manages to clean the system of the malicious program and save the bank's client's money. His friend thanks him for this, but even at this moment, he can't bring himself to tell Intan that he likes her. Moreover, he makes a serious mistake. He offers her a latte, forgetting that she can't stand coffee with milk. In the evening, Iman finds himself in another unpleasant situation. He barely makes it home, clutching his stomach, but the toilet is occupied by his father. The old man leisurely exits the restroom, and while Iman finds relief, his father tells him about his new business. He spent his last money on black cumin tablets, which, according to marketers, can save lives. The old man promises Iman that he will soon sell all the tablets and return the money that was meant for the apartment rent. The men quarrel, and Iman leaves for his room, but a few minutes later, he hears a strange noise. When he returns, he finds his father unconscious on the floor. Intan arrives at the hospital to support a friend. It turns out his father had a heart attack. The doctors tell the young man that his father needs surgery, but it costs 60,000, which he doesn't have. Iman asks his boss for a loan, but Reza refuses to lend him a large sum. He even refuses to put Iman on staff, which would increase his salary a bit. Visiting his father in the evening, Iman doesn't know what to do or how to save the old man. The situation becomes even more serious when Iman is confronted by his father's old friends. It turns out the old man borrowed money from local gangsters, and they give the young man 2 days to repay his father's debt. Arriving at work, Iman surprises everyone with a bruise on his face, but he is no less surprised when a new employee, Ash Lee, appears in the department, showing attention to Intan. Iman struggles to work. He constantly thinks about the debt and how to save his father. The troublesome old lady returns this time with a different complaint. She is unhappy that 1 cent is being deducted from her account for service charges. Her yelling gives Iman a brilliant idea. He can steal just 1 cent from each account, which will give him enough money to repay the gangsters and save his father. The young man spends the entire night writing a malicious program to help him execute his plan. He disguises the virus in an email and sends it to Reza's inbox to infiltrate the bank's system. When the boss opens the file, the program spreads to all the bank's computers, and a system reboot initiated by Intan to fix the errors helps the virus gain access to the accounts. Finally, Iman manages to withdraw 1 cent from each account and transfer the money to an old abandoned account. But Iman's joy is short-lived when the creditors appear, and he has to escape through the window. The gangsters chase Iman, but he manages to get into a stranger's car and, for a hefty sum, asks the driver to take him to a bank on the other side of the city. On the way, the young man transfers the money to an account from which he can withdraw 90,000. The gangsters pursue the car, but for an additional fee, the driver agrees to participate in the chase. Finally, he delivers Iman to the bank branch, and the 1-cent thief calmly withdraws the money. Iman gives the needed amount to the gangsters and pays the taxi driver the promised bonus. After that, the young man collapses on the ground, realizing there is no turning back. The remaining money Iman takes to the hospital to pay for his father's surgery. The next day, he arrives at work with a joyful smile, unaware that his troubles are just beginning. In the evening, he visits his father and reflects on the fact that he would do the same again to save him. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the city, the gangsters kill Reza. Iman starts having nightmares, but he reassures himself that they are just his imagination. He spends his free time with his father, hoping that the stolen money wasn't in vain and that he can save the old man's life. The bank finds out about the theft, but at first, the management doesn't want to report it to the police to avoid panic. Things become much more serious when the bank learns about Reza's death. Everyone becomes scared, but Iman is especially frightened. He is sure that the boss's tragedy happened because of his robbery. Zhe-Ru, the head of security, appears in the office. He orders the employees to stay at their workstations until the police arrive and to tell the officers everything they know about the incident. Iman tries to remain calm, but when he remembers the email he sent to Reza's computer, it becomes clear he needs to do something. Overwhelmed with anxiety, the clerk feels sick and runs to the bathroom to relieve some stress. There, Iman meets another employee who has access to the restricted floor. He steals a protective film from the colleague's smartphone and uses it to forge a fingerprint. Disguised in a janitor's uniform, Iman sneaks to the required floor. First, he breaks into the administration office, deletes the camera recordings, and prepares a pass to access the server room. When the program asks for an employee's name, Iman decides to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and enters Ash Lee's name to get rid of Intan's suitor. While the young man tries to destroy the evidence, the head of security calls Intan and Ash Lee for a conversation. Meanwhile, one of the employees hears a strange noise, but Iman manages to remain unnoticed. Intan discovers a system update made by someone unknown. Everyone realizes that the criminal is inside the building, and the police start searching for the hacker. In the server room, Iman begins to panic, but gathers himself and starts working. At that moment, Zhe-Ru receives a notification that someone entered the server room using Ash Lee's card. The head of security forbids the young man from leaving the office. The others head to the server room to try to find the thief. Iman manages to delete the file seconds before being discovered. He escapes, but runs into a security guard in the hallway and nearly gets caught. The guard doesn't recognize the clerk and calls him over only to return the fallen protective film. After that, Iman removes the janitor's uniform and hurries to his workstation. At this time, Zehru examines the empty desk, but the clerk manages to emerge from under the desk, pretending he was picking up a drop pen. Zehru tries to figure out which of the employees might be involved in the crime and asks Intan if there is anyone else in the bank who could hack the system. The young woman realizes that only Iman has such skills. The young man tries to calm himself down, convinced that no one will figure out what he did. Terror grips Iman again when his friend asks him to go to the roof and check the access log for the server room, but he manages to convince Intan that he didn't leave his workstation and couldn't be involved. Iman tells his friend about the surgery that supposedly was paid for by his father's relatives. That evening, he visits his father in the hospital and is happy that the old man has finally come to. The doctor assures the young man that his father will be fine, but she informs him that he needs to pay an additional $15,000 for maintenance and medications. Iman realizes that he can't get the money the same way again. The virus has been removed, and the police are closely monitoring the bank, but he decides to take a risk and perform the 1-cent theft trick at other banks. This time, Iman doesn't act as boldly. He is afraid his scam will be exposed, but remembering his father, he realizes he has no other choice. After a few hours, Iman's account holds 800,000 ringgits. 2 weeks later, Intan continues to search for the culprit. She checks the server, and Ash helps her. He suggests his colleague take a break, but Intan doesn't trust him and decides to work alone. Irene removes Intan from her position and places Ash in her place. The upset young woman returns to her desk and learns that her subordinate was able to recover some files from the surveillance cameras. In one of the recordings, Intan recognizes Iman. The young man buys an expensive car and brings his father to an elite apartment he bought with the stolen money. The old man understands that his son's money was acquired dishonestly, but he pretends not to notice anything. But the family's idyll doesn't last long. A doorbell rings, and Devin and his henchmen appear on the doorstep. The uninvited guests sit at the table and eat the dinner that Iman had prepared for his father. The gangsters behave very rudely, and looking at them, the old man remembers how similar thugs took his car several years ago. Back then, little Iman defended his father, but now the father lacks the courage to protect his son, who is being mocked and ridiculed by the invaders. Intan re-examines the camera footage, but she doesn't tell Ash about it. However, when the young man comes to talk to his friend about her suspension, it turns out he already knows about the recovered footage. Iman tries to come up with a story about how he got rich, but Devin turns out to be a smart guy. He realizes he's being deceived. Using a hammer, the gangster finds arguments to convince the young man to tell the truth. Meanwhile, Ashley assembles a team and constructs a timeline of events on the day when someone deleted data from the server. Intan joins the team. She doesn't say she saw Iman in the footage, but promises to help figure everything out. Iman recalls his poor childhood. Already then, his father couldn't earn properly and constantly only dreamed of phones. While Intan gathers more evidence implicating her friend, he has to reveal his secret to Devin. The gangster doesn't give the young man a chance to save his father until Iman reveals his criminal scheme. Iman is forced to transfer the money he siphoned from others' accounts to the gangster's account. When the old man regains consciousness and tries to shame his son, Iman reminds him of his poor and hungry childhood. The young man admits he vividly remembers his parents' fights and regrets such a past. Meanwhile, Devin's crew enjoys the pool and the views from the rooftop of a skyscraper. They use Iman as a servant, but the young man gets the idea to escape by stealing a gun from the raiders. The plan fails. Iman doesn't know how to handle a gun and doesn't take it off safety. For this, the robber punishes the young man severely, and his father silently watches again, not attempting to protect his son. Iman recalls how his mother left home without even hugging him goodbye. He mentally bids farewell to life, but finally, the old man gathers the courage and points the gun at the bandit's temple. Ashley discovers that Intan deleted one of the files her colleague had given her. The young man asks his friend if she needs help, but Intan assures him she has no secrets. In reality, the young woman finds several more recordings where Iman's face is clearly visible. Iman and his father escape, but the robbers find them in the parking lot and open fire. The fugitives barely manage to reach their car, but finally, they drive out of the complex. Devin and his team don't give up. The chase begins on the night road. However, Iman's car runs out of gas, and the men have to hide in the narrow streets of the city. The old man's heart begins to fail, and he runs out of strength. Iman has to leave his father and run alone to avoid being caught by the gangsters. Intan wakes up from memories. Many years ago, the young woman also broke the law and taught Iman to do the same. At the time, it seemed like an easy game to her, but now she didn't know what to do and how to save her friend. Things become even harder for the young woman after she receives a message from her mother. The woman demands that Intan send her money and asks her not to come over the weekend and ruin her plans. Iman calls his friend and asks her to come to an abandoned construction site. Finding her friend in a bad state, Intan takes him to her place. Meanwhile, in his lair, Devin feeds his feeble father. The gangster enjoys the old man's suffering, who had treated him and his mother cruelly many years ago. Iman's father watches the scene nearby. Seeing how the bandit treats his father, the old hostage realizes he has no chance of being saved. Iman takes a shower and gets rid of his knocked-out teeth. While Intan hears the water running, she decides to check her friend's computer. The young woman doesn't manage to do it. Her friend comes out of the bathroom and takes the laptop. Intan then demands explanations, but the clerk refuses to talk about his problems and assures her he just fell. Devin sends the fugitive a video message in which he uses a hammer again to convince the young man to come for his father. Intan starts having problems. Ash tells her that Irene demands all the video files from the cameras. The young man asks her to send them to the office, including those that were deleted. Taking advantage of the young woman being busy with the conversation, Iman escapes. Realizing he can't handle it alone, Iman decides to seek help. He makes a call, and an hour later, the young man descends into the city's underworld. Iman meets the guy who drove him to the bank on the day of the first robbery. The drug dealer is unhappy that Iman wants to involve him in a criminal story. He punishes his friend for being pushy and refuses the fee Iman could have paid him. Ash covers for Intan and tells Irene that all the videos were damaged. The young woman thanks her colleague, but he asks her to tell him the truth to understand what he's getting into. Iman witnesses an attack on a city cafe. While the young man is distracted by the shooting, an old friend appears behind him who seems to have changed his mind and is ready to help. The blonde leads Iman to a secluded place and demands a down payment. When the money is transferred, the young man tells Iman about Ibu Zara, a woman from the criminal world who is much more dangerous than Devin. Meanwhile, Ibu Zara finds a man who tried to do something horrible to a little girl. Recalling her own terrible childhood, Ibu Zara promises to become a protector for the girl, and her henchmen do their job. Devin also punishes his men. He is furious that they let Iman escape. The young man's father barely survives the ordeal, but it seems to him that he hears his son's voice, which gives the old man strength. The blonde arranges a meeting for Iman with Ibu Zara. The young man says his friend needs help, and Iman promises Ibu Zara any amount of money for saving his father. As proof, the young man transfers the first part of the sum to the woman's account. But Ibu Zara also refuses to deal with Devin and kicks the young man out of the car. Intan watches the video several times and finally decides to tell Ash everything. She comes to his place and tells him that Iman is hiding the truth, but it turns out that the young man is not the only one involved in the bank scams. Ash found out that Irene also tried to delete some data.